right. Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday. Ducks. Duckies. Alright, so it is about pretty close to 7 o'clock and we're starting out on the Santiago Creek Trail. Morning. It's chilly. My gosh. It's supposed to be hot this week. I think we're going to actually make it into the 90s. For me though, hot's like 95 plus. Gosh, it's cold. Jeez Louise. Look at all those colors down there. Looks cool. A little bit of life growing out from this dark gray canal. It was once a flowing river. So they replaced this plaque right here. Somebody had stolen it. This historical plaque. Arroyo Santiago. Named by the Portola expedition, which camped on its bank 0.5 of a mile northeast of here on the night of July 27, 1769. Jose Antonio Yorba, an officer of the expedition, was one of the grantees of the surrounding rancho of Santiago de Santana. Erected by Orange Civic Organizations and Citizens, July 1966. 0.5 of a mile northeast of here. Interesting. coming. Blind corner. Let's go to the other side. When I was a kid, we were like little saboteurs. So I had this friend I grew up with, his name was Justin. And, growing up out in the country, we ran like all over the countryside. So it was this little town called Tarabella. And he lived right catty corner from our school, which was a Lutheran Christian school. Like out in the middle of nowhere. There's probably like 100 students that went there. So, there's a school, an old school on the property, a church, a cemetery, and then across the street from his house were olive groves, and then he lived in the middle of an orange grove, and just country life. And we were into like a lot of at that time like a lot of war movies. He was really into World War I and World War II when I first met him. And this is like I started hanging out with this guy when I was in 2nd grade. So he was a precocious. Little kid, and so I was more like kind of like he wore glasses, and at that time we were into Legos, but we got into like at that age we got into oh, they fixed the fence. Is there no escape? Oh, they opened it right here. Gotta follow the jogger. But we were into the war movies, and then we built models, and we had fake guns and we had real guns. We were just we wore camouflage, and it was just like we would just run around like all over the countryside. Sorry, I keep getting distracted. And there was this guy, his name was Mark Mack, and like he used to tend to a lot of the groves out there, so pull sprinklers and do all the irrigation and stuff in the olive grove, and then a few other surrounding orange groves. And he was like just a mysterious figure. He lived with his I presume his mother or his grandma in this ranch house. And she was very old. I think she went to our church, but he didn't. And he had like just long, scruffy hair and a long, scruffy beard. And he had this motorcycle that was like too small. Like it was like a 125 or something. And a lot of people back then, they were pulling sprinklers and doing that kind of stuff on 3-wheelers. I mean, that's what the 3-wheelers were, I think, kind of intended for. But he had this little 2-wheeler, and he was so big for it, the shocks were like totally just slammed out on it. And man, he was like, he had become like, he would always it always seemed like kind of like he would chase us. So we built like different forts all around the orange groves. And so we had forts and trees, and like, because with orange trees you could like go inside of them and hollow them out. So we would go inside of these orange trees. They have this canopy around them, and we break all the small branches off on the inside so you could get in there. And then we would take a big piece of wood, and you start at the middle of the trunk, and then you pull all the dead leaves out from the trunk, and you push them all out to the side, so you had this little tent. And then we would dig holes, and we had like these cigar boxes, and we would put all of our illegal contraband inside these boxes and bury them, because we were always making weapons, or making knives, and we made these lethal blowguns out of nails. Like, I could shoot it's that palm tree from here and stick it into the tree. So you could take like these small nails and take a piece of like magazine paper, like the thicker paper, and make them into this conical piece of paper, and you slide it over the nail, and then you tape it up, and then you cut it off at the end of a half-inch PVC pipe, and those are your darts. And we were this was in the 80s, so like being ninjas was super popular too, so we were into that. So we were into anything like that, man. But this guy, Mark Mack, I hear a motorcycle on the trail, y'all. Oh, here he comes. Let's let him go by. So what we did is, I was thinking about this when I was riding in the dirt, like people being annoyed about us riding bikes back there. So Mark would always kind of chase us around the orange groves, and it was a game. I don't know if he hated us. I'm sure he hated us. But he had this one hill he used to go down from the main street, and you go down it into the olive grove. So we dug a big pit going down that hill, and covered it up with like, I don't even remember what we covered it up with, but we covered it up like with sticks and leaves and stuff like that, so that it was like a trap, I don't think we put punji sticks in it. I think we probably considered that. So sharp spikes coming up out of it. We didn't do that. But we used to make all these little traps for him to make him crash on his motorcycle. It's pretty crazy. It was wild. But we were constantly like, I think we're probably in like 3rd or 4th grade when we first got the sheriffs called on us, because our arch, and this was all it wasn't in our imagination, because these events, these things that happened were real, like this stuff really happened. But it was like in our minds, we thought like everybody was like our enemy, So there was this family that lived down the road, and actually the older brother, his name was Mike, was friends with my older brother back in grade school, but they were 5 years older than us. And these guys were they were metalheads. I think they had come from like Kansas and moved out to the country in California. So there was a mom, a dad, a brother, and sister, and then like they were into heavy metal music, so long hairs, black shirts, hot rod cars, he had this red, I don't know what it was, like if it was a Camaro or something like that, that was all souped up. And it's freezing, so it's hard for me to talk right now. So one day we were in this corner tree at this main intersection of 256 and I don't know the other cross street, but it was a four-way stop, and we had one of our forts right in the corner tree, and we had those blowguns, and Mike was always antagonizing us. You know, those guys would threaten to beat us up, or if we went around their house, they'd throw rocks at us. And we even had like straight up wars against them, and they lived like in the olive groves, at the end of the olive groves. So yeah, we had actually had legit wars with these guys, where, you know, we're across the street from his house. At the school behind these embankments, we had these shields, and we're having dirt clod fights with these guys and throwing dirt clods at each other, and they would chase us, just craziness. So one day, like, we hear this heavy metal music, and he comes pulling up in his car with, I think the guy that was with him was his cousin. They got their music blasting. So we unleashed on him. We shot our blowguns at their car. And I don't know, one of ours went through the window of the car that was open and must have hit, I don't think it hit them, maybe it hit them, I don't know. But like, they were pissed. So they got out of their car. I ran into the grove. I heard Justin screaming. He took off running. I took off running the other direction. I went across the street and climbed into another orange tree up to the top. And I'm peeking out of the tree, and I see they're chasing Justin. And like, it's probably Mike. He was driving. He's chasing Justin. The other guy's kind of getting out as well and kind of chasing him. But he was in a proximity where he could still see the car. So Mike, in his anger, didn't put the car into park, and the car started drifting through the intersection and crashed into the tree underneath me. So I'm up in this tree. His cousin's like yelling at him. So Mike stops chasing Justin to go get his car, because his car crashed into the orange tree. But I could see the hood of his orange car underneath the tree. So they're cussing and just angry. Obviously, I'd be angry too. And so it was just a mess. So they took off. I mean, these guys they knew where we lived. You know, that we all knew each other. So they got mad. They called the cops on us. I couldn't believe it. But Justin's mom had this thing where when she wanted us to come in, she would stand on the back porch and just scream out, "Justin!" You could like hear her yelling for miles away, you know. So we start hearing her after that. So we kind of like sneak up, and we see the sheriff's there. Like we're like, no way, dude, we're not going over there. So we hid out for the rest of the day. We didn't come back until the evening, and we never ended up like resolving the issue. You know, the cops never got us, and I don't know if we had any other confrontations with those guys, but it just put like a whole new element of danger in our day-to-day. You know, we had to stay hidden out for like months, you know, because if we ran into him, we knew we were going to get our asses kicked. And they actually had one of our darts that the sheriff left with Justin's mom. And yeah, dude, it's crazy. We just weren't thinking, like, if that dart would have hit him, like, I mean, it would have gone in that deep, but it would have, they're nails, you know, like, I don't know the size of nails, you know, like that long, like the smaller size. Not for like nailing 2x4s, but for nailing like siding. Pretty funny. But yeah, we're always getting chased. Man. We just did some awful things. We just, I don't know, we were just so little, you know? We didn't think about it. We had these wrist rockets. We're gonna cut across over here. We had these wrist rockets, and we put walnuts in them. There's a massive walnut tree, so when the walnuts fall, before they fall out of the tree, or when they first fall out of the tree, they're green, and so they've got that green like shell around them. This is like a flat zone. I was thinking I'd cruise through here. But they would fit in our wrist rockets, you know. So slingshots, you know, but the crazy ones. So we would shoot those we wouldn't shoot those at regular cars, but we would shoot them at diesel trucks. So if there's like a big diesel truck with a trailer, we would launch those things at their trailers, and you know, they would explode. So we like that effect. And I think I already have a video where I talked about our bomb making. I'll save that for another day, but yeah, we got into a bomb making phase, like as we got older. That started with taking 22 shells, because we had guns, but we would take 22 shells and take the powder out of the shells. So you just pull the slug off and dump the powder out, but the 22s just weren't, you know, the 22 long rifle shells, they just weren't you didn't yield that much gunpowder, you know. But we ended up getting our hands on some on a container of smokeless rifle powder. And that's when the bomb making began. But I already talked about that in another video, so I don't want to repeat myself. Alright, let's see what's going on. Yeah, I was going to talk about how we used to tape my neighbors. So I lived like 4 or 5 miles away from Justin, but we had some new neighbors that moved into us that had 2 boys that are around the same age as me and my brother. And we played ditch'em at nighttime. I think I've told this story too. But thinking about the gun shells and stuff too, we would tape. They found a whole cache of old bullets when they moved in an old chicken shed. And we had, you know, the little Daisy BB guns. So they, well, we all did. We would tape the bullets or shotgun shells up to the end of the BB gun and shoot the primer with the BB gun. Oh man, it's crazy. I guess when you start getting old, you start thinking of stories. Wish I had some more stories. I already told my story about the bees. I don't know, it's been a long time since I talked about that stuff. a street sweeper down this bike lane. It's getting better. All right, 7.3 miles, 30 minutes. 7:22. Broken bottle. Man. I guess that's all the stories I have for the day. I do have a lot of stories with our new neighbors. See, I think I've already talked about when we first moved in the house and our neighbors were arsonists. I talked about that not too long ago. And then so like I said, when we lived in this house, we had some new neighbors that moved in, and I talked about these guys before, Joey and Timmy. So my brother was 5 years older than me, and they probably moved in when I was in maybe 5th grade, 6th grade, and Timmy was a year Tim was a year younger than me, and then Joey was like a year younger than my brother. And it was just a welcome. You know, I was always leaving and going over to Justin's house, but when the new neighbors moved in, you know, we became friends with them. We had like a basketball court that we made in between both of our houses, like literally on a dirt driveway between our houses. We had this basketball court we used to play on and have slam dunk contests and stuff like that. But we had another guy that lived down the road from us. His name was Ronnie. And Joey was more like kind of a cowboy guy, and then Tim and I were more like into skateboarding. That's like when we first got into skating. And then of course playing Nintendo. And they lived in like an old farmhouse. So the people that, like a very small one, the people that had lived next to us were an older couple who had come out from Oklahoma and built their own house, had their own garden, had their own livestock. I don't know how many acres they had, probably like 3 acres. So they rented out this house to Joey and Timmy's family. And so they had a canning shed outside of the house. So it was this old building that they used to keep. The lady that lived there used to keep all her canned goods in there, because I remember it from before they moved in, and that's where Joey and Timmy's bedroom was. And it was really small. It was like big enough to like, oh man, the park's blocked off. It was big enough to fit one bed in there, like one, probably like, I don't know if it was a double bed or a queen bed. And that's where they slept. The parents made them sleep outside the house. It was a small house. I mean, it was just for a couple, you know. There was only 2 of them when they built it. So when you go, they had a Nintendo, so when we would go in there to play Nintendo, everybody had to sit on the bed. But one time, so Ronnie lived down the road, and he was a country boy too, you know. They didn't have horses, but they were still just country boys, you know. So he'd wear, this dude was something else, man. He would wear like, he had a 10-speed he would ride around town on, and they would take the 10-speed and like flip the handlebars up like this. And Ronnie was massive. He was, I don't know how old he was, probably like 12 or 13, but he was massive. He was like, you know, 6 foot tall plus. He's just a huge kid. And let's check out this graffiti. Grab it. Wow. I don't know why they would do that. And so Ronnie, he was a trip, so he'd ride around on this bike and he wore cowboy boots and Wranglers and, you know, the cowboy shirts. Like he could be wearing flip-flops, cut off shorts, cut off Wranglers, a cowboy shirt with a cowboy hat. And then he would chew like Redman, that pouch tobacco. And so like Ronnie would always come over and hang out with us, and like he was friends with Joey. And one time they got a hold of some alcohol. So Ronnie had already had been into drinking at that age. And he had an older brother named David. And anyway, so there was this park down the road from our house, probably about a mile away, called Veterans Park, and we'd always go there and hang out. There was a dirt bike tracks behind there, and so it was a popular spot for us to go. And we knew that Joey and Ronnie were hanging out at Veterans Park, so we went over there to see what they were up to. And when we went there, they were in the back of Veterans Park, and they were hammered. They were hammered drunk, like so drunk they couldn't even like get up. And so we told them, like, yeah, you guys give us your money, you know, like give us some money because we want to go to the store. And they were like, I don't remember what they said, but they obviously weren't going to give us any money. But they were so hammered, we robbed them. So we robbed Ronnie and Joey and took all their money. Not a lot, you know, because they were so hammered. We're like, dude, we'll just take it from you. So like we robbed them and went to the store and got candy and Cokes or whatever we decided to get. But yeah, I mean, if back then, like, growing up out there was probably the best, you know. I can't imagine, like, anywhere else that would have been more fun. Yeah, granted, you have parents that just let you do whatever you want to do. Like, from a young age, like, I was wandering. I think the first time I ever saw pollywogs, I have no idea like how old I was, but it was when we were living out there, and we're wandering around some fields and with the neighbor kids. So we had all these neighbor kids that we would run around with, and they were the ones that were constantly playing with matches and setting stuff on fire. So I was very young, like first or second grade, and I was hanging out with these guys, and we came across a pond, and this isn't like a pond, like it's like an irrigation pond or a drainage pond for one of the groves. So they take their tractors and make this hole in the ground, and there's this dark, muddy water there, and it was full of pollywogs. So we went, this is how crazy we were. We went and found like a 5-gallon bucket, and we went swimming in that pond. And it was just muddy water. I can remember walking on the bottom of the pond, you know, with my feet getting stuck in the mud, and the water just being brown, and then the pollywogs, you could see them come up out of the water. We put a bunch of them in this bucket. I don't remember like if we like what we did with them. The bus coming up behind us. Well, I left a broom. like how many miles like we would walk like in the summertime in the hot sun, you know, just take off. We'd have no food, no water, just take off and walk it, exploring. Well, to get water, we would go into people's yards, you know. I mean, there wasn't a lot of houses, but like where we lived, there was a lot of houses. It was an actual, like, kind of a country block. They had built, like, these houses that all looked very similar around this one country block. And, but once you started getting into the outskirts, you know, the houses were fewer and far between. So like if you get thirsty, you just like sneak into somebody's yard and use their water hose. I can remember going on a walk with Russell. His name was Russell, like when we first moved in there, and we walked out to these tomato fields. So he had brought a little bag of salt, a little Ziploc sandwich bag with salt in it. And we would go to this tomato field, I guess you would call it, and pick the tomatoes and put salt on them and eat them. It's crazy. A lot of breaking into abandoned houses. I wish I could tap into some of those old memories. I'm in this blind spot. Baby on board. Idiot. What the hell is she doing? Those are the moments where it's more challenging to not get angry. All right, let's see if we're gonna beat this light. So yeah, I used to listen to this guy, Wayne Dyer. He's like kind of like a spiritual guy. And he said when he started meditating on a regular basis that he started to be able to really go back into his childhood and like back to when he was very young, you know, like 2 years old. He started to be able to recollect a lot of old experiences. So that's what I kind of want to do. See who this dumbass is. Oh yeah, it's a lady. I'm definitely not gonna mess with a lady. All right, well, kind of a different type of ride. I was trying to just come up with stuff to talk about, so I'm not the best storyteller. But maybe that'll break up the monotony. Try to come up with some other stories. Oh, we're still recording. Thanks for watching my video. We'll catch you on the next one.